Hi, my name is Rory Canterbury. I'm the host today on Archery Talk 101, and we have Kevin as a guest today. We're going to have a good conversation with him. Before we get started, though, I want to let you know you can listen to the podcast on Spotify and also on Audible. You can go out to audible.com and you can search for it and listen to it free there. And wherever you have podcasts are hosted, as well as you can watch the video in the Archery Talk 101 Facebook group. It's a good group of archers with all kinds of skills. And if you have questions, whether it's shooting form or bow tech questions, answer it, ask it, and then we'll get you going here. I don't know how this got started, but I can't remove this AI from
Yeah.
starting up. I use a different AI companion to do it.
Hey,
But
no
anyway,
worries.
normally it starts up before we get the podcast going, but
Yeah.
not this time. And you
Yeah,
can
no
also
worries.
watch the video on my YouTube channel, Learn to Fix Yourself. And now let's get on with the show. Welcome to the show, Kevin.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I appreciate the invite. It's nice to hear from you, Roy.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun talking with archers. How about if you introduce yourself and tell us a little something about you and maybe how you got started in archery?
Yeah, so my name is Kevin Toye. I'm from British Columbia. I I'm a long-time hunter. I grew up on the coast of British Columbia, so obviously hunting and fishing that was present pretty much from the time I could walk. We're out in the wilderness chasing squirrels or doing fishing off the dock down in the ocean. So fishing was definitely more of a priority when I was a younger man. I loved the rivers, the Skeena River and all the tributaries off at fly fish, and I did a lot of coastal fishing, obviously living on the coast. I was a commercial fisherman there for a few years, and yeah, and living up on the coast, we hunted a lot of moose. My dad was a big moose hunter. They hunted for food back in the day. They didn't chase horns. And blacktails was another big one for us. And then as I got a little older, it kind of transitioned into some a little bit more exotics like chasing sheep and a few goat trips here and there. And but still, we love to get a moose down for the freezer. And then when I was in my mid 20s, 27 to be exact, I moved to the Okanagan and I moved down here. And my cousin, who was a mentor of mine in both archery and bow hunting, he found a passion chasing elk, and he kind of took me out for the first time, and it's one of those things actually. It was kind of funny. I went out on my very first elk hunt with him. We were out for 3 days, and I harvested a nice 6 by 6 elk. And I thought, man, everybody talks about how hard this is. And then, the years after, he didn't come along with me, and I realized how hard it was chasing elk and being successful getting that prestigious 6 point. So I think it was 4 years after that I was able to finally get one on my own, and that was with a rifle. And one thing about me, Roy, is I kind of have this passion and this bug is I don't if I'm going to do anything, I don't like to suck at it. So I go pretty hard and I'm pretty intense. So I put everything into it that I had at the time. I didn't have any kids or a wife, so I was able to devote a lot of time chasing animals and really perfecting my craft. And then yeah, it just evolved into wanting more challenge, and that's when I started messing around with the bow, started doing bow hunts, and it would start out actually. You go on a say a 5 day hunt. I'd bring a rifle and a bow, and I'd for the first 3 or 4 days I'd be packing my bow in my hand, and then by day 5 I was like, man, this is too hard. So I'd resort to the rifle, and I did that for a few years, and then finally one year I decided no more. I'm gonna stick to bow only. So I made sure, I didn't sight in my guns. I didn't even clean them. I just, kept the locks on them, put them away in the cabinet. And that first year, yeah, it was pretty rough. I was able to harvest one animal, and then it's been a slow progression since then. I've put a lot of work into it. I've definitely honed the craft of bow hunting a lot more than, it's such a different breed than rifle hunting. And so I really had to niche down to specifically bow hunting and kind of, take the tools that I learned rifle hunting over the years and just apply them in a different method than bow hunting demands. So, but in terms of archery, yeah, I mean, I'm a diehard bow hunter, and obviously archery is every bit of that. So, I shoot my bow a lot. I recently have started getting into target archery, which is new for me. So this year my goal was to get a 30X, and I haven't got there yet, but I'm working really hard at it. So a 300 with 21 was my best score so far. So I'm still plugging away, but my goal is this year I'd like to get that prestigious 30X done. So anyway, that's kind of the long-winded answer to your question or my introduction anyway.
Oh, well, that's quite all right. It's all interesting and to have a goal of getting 30x. Yeah, that's a great accomplishment, especially with a bow. That's you know,
Yeah.
30x with a rifle is not that difficult.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess I was in high school. I was on the rifle team in high school, so I'm able to, shoot it pretty accurately. And although as I
Right.
get older, I can't hold quite as steady, but I
Yeah.
being reloaded, I was able to work up a load for my 270, my 30-06 bolt to put 3 shots in the same hole.
Wow.
At the
Yeah.
indoor range, shooting off a bag.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't all locked down. It was just shooting off bags, so I still had to do everything else. But that's why I reload. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
so
I
I
was
have the
never a good,
accuracy and ammo.
yeah, I was never a very good, very accurate rifle shooter. I flinched a lot. I had a lot of, I guess in archery, you'd call that target panic. And it's funny, like in terms of archery and target panic, I got it a little bit at the beginning and I just fought through it. And every once in a while, that demon will kind of work its way back. But now I can control it really well. And I've always just felt more comfortable with a bow in my hand than a rifle.
Yeah, I definitely started with a bow way longer than I did with a rifle.
Hmm. Yeah. 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 And that's the one thing about British Columbia is in terms, for hunting, we don't have like we have a very short and very limited archery only season. So like at the beginning of the year, September 1st to September 9th, we have for elk and deer, we're allowed 9 extra days at the beginning of September to hunt with a bow over the rifle. And then for the late season whitetail, we're given a little bit at the end of it in December as well. So it's a very generous rifle season here in British Columbia, so there's not a lot of incentive to hunt with a bow. When I tell a lot of people that I hunt with a bow only, they look at me and they're like, "Why are you mad? Why do you do that? Like you don't have to. It's so much easier with a rifle." But I mean, harvesting an animal with a bow, for me, you just can't beat it. Like there's nothing to it. And you try to explain that to somebody who hasn't done it yet, and they're like, "Yeah, I've killed big animals too." And like, no, I'm telling you, you can shoot a smaller animal with a bow, and it'll blow your mind. You'll never you'd be hard pressed to go back.
Yeah, well, and then too, I had one guy that he did a lot of bow hunting and going off with the big game animals. And somebody asked him one time, and he was relaying this to me. He says, "What's the difference between a bow hunter and a gun hunter?" Like that, I said, the time you spend with the animal.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
true. Yeah.
because pre-hunt, you have the same work to go into pre-hunt. You have the same work to get there set up. After you kill the animal, you have the same work to get it processed and cut up and carried out. So what's the
Mhm.
difference? Well, you see at your target at 300 yards, the rifle, you just go down and shoot, hunt's over. With a
Right.
bow, you're just starting. It might
Yeah,
take you a
exactly.
week to figure out how to get close enough with a bow. And uh,
Yeah.
and then some of the rifle hunters don't understand what it really takes to bow hunt. And then once they convert over to doing archery as well, they find out. But ask some of the rifle hunters, have you ever shot a deer under 100 yards? Most of them say no.
Hmm.
So I'm not even getting excited yet.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah,
even in
absolutely.
range. Now there are
Yeah.
archers that will take those longer shots, but um, they practice those long shots all the time. And for me, as I'm getting older, I can't see that well far enough away. So I have just a big blur. So I'd be shooting at a blur. So there's no reason to even take there.
Hmm.
And I never was really much for longer shots. Um, my longest, I
Hmm.
think, is 40 yards, and my shortest is 5 yards.
Yeah. Yeah, and I
Most,
think that's the responsibility of the archer themselves to know what you're capable of and because I mean at the end of the day, you want a clean harvest. You want to be
right.
able to harvest that animal, to kill that animal as fast as possible with causing the least amount of stress to the animal. And it comes down to, it comes down to your training, I find. If you practice, if your eyesight's good, I'm getting a little older too, and mine is starting to deteriorate as well. But if you're comfortable shooting at 100 yards, then for you, your maximum might be 70 yards, right? Like I have no problem grouping at 100 yards. I can group really good at 100 yards, but still, I mean, 70 yards. I have killed animals over 70 yards with a bow. I prefer not to. 50 to 70 I find is like my sweet spot. I find if anything sub 50, man, I'm a little too close to the animal. I'm a little too loud, and I feel I start to get real freaked out because once you get sub 50, it takes the smallest amount of movement or breathing or anything, right? Drawing back on your bow too hard. And especially when you're hunting whitetails, man, they're likely to spook and bump or jump. And yeah, I've blown a lot of stalks by getting too close to them. But man, is it fun chasing, deer and elk and all these animals with a bow in your hand. I love it. I have so much passion for it. And anybody who does it consistently and regular, I'm sure they can attest to that as well.
Yeah, it's a little more of a challenge, actually, quite a bit more of a challenge.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it really the fun part. It's easy to take a rifle and go out and shoot them. You just got to get somewhat within range, and
Yeah.
you can be moving around, but like you said, once you start getting closer, I try to set up for 20-yard shots,
Hmm.
but they never read the script. They always come in closer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know
You
for my
know,
brother too, he hunts in Alberta, and he says the same thing. He has 10 yard shots, and they get in really close, and so he doesn't mind. I find here in British Columbia, just because of our terrain and our topography, you know, more of the shots are opportunity. You have to really work the animal a lot more, especially if you're like hunting the higher alpine mule deer or elk. You're getting into elk territory. One of the hardest parts is putting yourself in a position where you're going to be able to harvest the animal, and that was one of the hard things I learned about when it came to bow hunting. Yeah, I'd be calling elk in, no problem. They'd come in, but I wouldn't have a lane to shoot them, or I'd try to force a lane, not knowing my arrow path, and all of a sudden I'd hit a branch and spook the elk to two ridges over. And so that was one of the things that, one of the hardships I had to learn too. And it really is. You really have to pay attention to these, and you really have to practice these to really hone your craft as a bow hunter. And that's one of the nice things. Like I kind of feel blessed to hunt in the area I am. I mean, it does definitely you have its challenges. You got to be in physically good shape. So, I train a lot. Right now, I'm training, 5 days a week. I run lots. I lift weights. I try to keep myself physically active year round, not only because, I'm getting older and it's a lot harder to get it back in shape than
right.
if you don't get out of shape. So if I find if I can stay in a regular routine and really focus on honing my craft as a bow hunter year round, I'm just that much more effective in the backcountry. And it's just all these little things that I do throughout the year, like shooting my bow every day and staying in shape, and those are the things I can control. These things I can control every day. I can't really control, I can't hunt elk 365 days a year as much as I would like to. I just don't have the opportunity to. None of us do. I mean, there might be some of us do, but not me anyway. So I try to focus on the things I can control, staying in shape, shooting my bow, things like that throughout the year. And that has really helped me, I found, um, you know, become successful when I'm hunting deer and elk in the backcountry in British Columbia.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even just for, doing local 3D shoots. If
Hmm.
you're
Yeah.
struggling just to walk to the next target, imagine what should be if you was out hunting and had to climb a hill. And
Yeah.
and some of the ranges around here, there's some, decent little elevation changes. Nothing like walking up the mountains up there, but just a little bit of that, just walking around, and in the summertime when it could be 90 degrees out, and you're
Hmm.
carrying extra water, and you got a nice little insulated pouch that you're putting it in, and you start off with frozen water, and by the time you're done filling it up, you might still have some ice left at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So that's tough to do when you're not in shape, and like you said, as you get older, it's harder and harder to stay in shape.
Yeah, it is for sure. And yeah, and you definitely, that's one thing I learned real fast was, you don't want to miss an opportunity. You want to make sure you want to make sure you give yourself the best chance possible. And if you're in good shape and you've been working on that year round, you can bust to the top of that ridge line and cut that deer off, or maybe slip over the ridge and cut off that herd of elk. And if you get to the top of the hill and you're gassed, you have no energy to draw your bow back, or you draw your bow back and you're shaking because you're breathing so heavy, your heart rate is just pounding, pounding, pounding. Those are things that, they could be detrimental to your hunt. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying but before, is like controlling the controllables. These are things that we can control as bow hunters year round, right? We can work on this. We can do these things year round to really, hone our skills as a bow hunter and really become effective.
Yeah, that's always a challenge is, how much time do you have to
Hmm. Yes.
practice? And well, actually, we have all the time we want. It's just how much you're willing to put in.
Yes. Well, and that's a big thing too, is priorities. And that kind of comes back to how much we want it, right? And it's like how much do I want to be successful this September? Because you're only going to get out of it what you put into it. That's kind of a hard lesson I learned early in life, but it's stuck with me pretty much throughout my entire life. So that's why I'm willing to, get up at 4 o'clock or 4:30 in the morning and do my workout before I have to go to work. I have a business, I have three kids. They consume a lot of my time. So, it's really challenging. Time is one of those things we'd all love to have more of. And unfortunately, we all have the same amount of time though, right? We all have 24
Right.
hours in a day, and it's just, we choose how we want to spend it. So, you know, I decided when I wanted to put the rifle down and pick up the bow, I made it a decision that, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be all in as a bow hunter, and to be all in, I kind of felt like I'd have to treat it like everything else I did in life. I couldn't half-ass it. If I was going to go in, I'd have to work at it year round, and it hasn't come easy. Like I said, that first year, I only harvest one animal, and then it was a slow progression up to leading up to where I am now, and now you know, I do pretty good. I'm able to fill a freezer full of animals, and they're all harvested with my bow. And now I'm passing the torch to my son. I'm taking him out, and he's just bow hunting now. So, we're kind of living that life. And to tell you the truth, hunting with him, it's kind of funny. I know I've talked about this before on my podcast that, when you first start out hunting, you go through all these things. And I think of my dad taking me hunting. And, he's always like, okay, well, don't step here, don't walk here, do this, do that, do this, do that. And like, you're slowing him down by him taking you along, right? And it's kind of funny that
Yeah.
it's come 360. Now I'm hunting with my son at the same time, and I'm like, okay, well, don't do this, step here, don't do that. And so I just picture myself hunting with my dad as, a young kid, and him going through the same things with me. But, it's a lot. It sure is fun getting out there, isn't it, Roy? Just getting out
Yeah.
and chasing these animals. Yeah, I have such a passion for it. And that's why I'm willing to put in the work. I am willing to do whatever it takes. And, if I have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get a workout in, or shoot some arrows, or put the kids to bed. It's nice when the days are a little short. Living up here in Canada, we kind of get the short end of the stick in the winter on daylight hours. But, I don't mind
Yeah.
putting the kids to bed and then going out later and, shooting arrows at a target till, 9 or 9:30. So if that's what it takes to be successful, then I'm going to do it. And yeah, I'm kind of just, it's like I said at the beginning, I'm kind of just built that way. I have this passion and this love for bow hunting, and I kind of just whatever it takes, that's the route I'm going to go.
You mentioned you have a podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
Yeah, so I started out like we were talking there before you hit record, and in late 2019 I started the Focus Hunting podcast. And a friend of mine who was a co-host of that show, he's taken it over, and now I have the podcast called Nock Talk. So it's kind of funny as I dove into the target side of things, and I really enjoy the target side. I really enjoy shooting at paper. I have a whole new respect for target archers. Um, you know, Being a bow hunter, I'd always think, well, how hard is it to shoot at a piece of paper or shoot at a mannequin that doesn't move? But as you get, as I started getting involved and getting into it, I was like, man, it's not easy shooting a 300. You might, doesn't matter how good of a shooter you think you are. You put that piece of paper at 18 meters and you try to hit that X. Like I said, my goal is 30 X's. So I, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. It's definitely challenging. So, like I said, I have a whole new respect for the target archer, and you really appreciate how good those guys are at shooting a bow, once you try
Yeah.
to do it yourself.
Yeah, especially the traditional ones, the shooting the recurves and longbows, and how accurate they are
Oh
shooting
man,
those. No
yeah,
sights, no nothing, and that's how I started out. They didn't really have sights on bows
yeah,
back in the '60s. They didn't have compound bows either,
hmm
so it
yeah,
was
yeah,
all either recurve or longbow and wood or
yeah,
fiberglass, and arrows were aluminum, wood, or fiberglass,
yeah,
and
yeah. That
and
was
that was your
before my
options.
time, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I have tried it. It's too hard for me, so I stick to the wheels. But when you think of like you look at Brady Ellison. That guy, he goes and he shoots 300 scores with a recurve bow. And it's amazing. It's amazing how accurate these
Yeah.
guys are with a recurve. Yeah, it just blows me away how accurate you could be with that. But I mean, again, I know Brady, he puts a lot of work into that, and I seen him out there today on his Instagram, and he's shooting his fingers are bleeding. He's shooting 500 arrows, but you know he's got a goal, right? He Olympic champ, and I think when it comes to recurve or archery in general, or maybe even it's all Olympics, but he's one of the most decorated Olympic, definitely one of the most decorated Olympic archers, but maybe one of the most decorated Olympians of all time. So it's pretty cool. He's an archer, and I got to tell you, I'm pretty stoked that compound has made its way into the 2028 Olympics in LA. I'm so excited to see the compound shooters at that event. It's just a foot in the door. It's going to be small, but it's going to be great to see. I think it's going to be really good for archery and really good for compound.
Yeah. Well, I actually brought up a couple of the sites for your podcast. So let
Hmm.
me go ahead and share my screen, and then kind of, you will see this one here, um, KVINYP at podbean.com is where this one popped up,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
43 episodes looks like.
yeah, yeah. I started this podcast in December. So yeah, I've been able to get a lot of great guests on, and it's kind of split between the bow hunters and the target guys. So it's been a lot of fun. I like I said, I this is a whole new challenge for me diving into this target side, and I'm fortunate enough to be in this kind of space for as long as I have that I can get some, thankfully enough, I've had some great guests on that have been willing to share their knowledge with me, just for a lifetime of doing it. I've had Chris Perkins on a few times. He's now a friend of mine, and you know, he probably gets sick of all the questions I ask him about target archery and all that stuff. So, but no, it's a lot of fun. Like I said, when you and I were talking off air, the archery community, once we get over the recurve versus compound squabbling, it's such a great community to be in.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, I see on episode 41 you had Matt on. I We just haven't been able to connect. I've been trying to get him on for a couple of years. He helps out at the Nebraska's Outdoor Expo up at Ponca
Right.
State Park, and I met
Yeah.
him up there 3 years ago, and we talked. And when I tried to get him back on last time, it's like he had a whole bunch of podcasts he already had lined up and just didn't have
Yeah.
time. And I need to get back with him again and call him up and say, hey Matt, he had time now.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great guy, and what an amazing story. He's a very inspirational person, and anybody who has the pleasure of meeting him or talking to him, um, be prepared to be inspired, because I know, just listening to him and knowing his story, the stuff that he overcame in life, and then to be where he is now, to to see his accomplishments and everything, from winning the Olympics and winning the gold medal and just going through life, and like he had no help when he got into archery. He just picked it up and he just started doing it. Obviously, when he started there wasn't a lot of people doing it, I don't think, and he didn't have a lot of access to anything, and he overcame all that, and he pulled it off and he won a gold medal. And yeah, he's a very inspirational person. I had a ton of fun talking to him, and yeah, anybody who gets a chance to meet that guy, yeah, he's one of a kind, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And an
Well,
amazing shooter, I tell you, man, he
oh
could shoot
yeah.
better than me, and he doesn't have any arms. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's if you didn't know, he goes by the armless archer because he was born with no arms. And he
yeah,
shoots a
yeah,
compound bow very well.
yes, very well. I mean that when he won the Olympics there, he hit that X so perfectly, and I don't know if you've seen that clip of him, but you could tell he knew he had won it, and
Oh
man, that
yeah, he
was
was jumping around.
yeah, he was jumping around, yeah, and he shared a story on my podcast about how his family was there, and it was pretty emotional to hear him talk about it, but again, just him and his life and his passion. He really loves his craft of archery. And man, I tell you, there's no one better in his category. That's for sure.
Yeah, last year at Outdoor Expo, he was up there and he's telling me, it's fairly shortly after he had won, and he's telling me this story, and it's like, oh man, this is something we've got to get his story out, and I need to give him a call and get him on the podcast here. Now that things kind of
Yes.
calmed down a little bit, but yeah, with his family being there, that was amazing. And the video
Oh
I
yeah.
seen, he shot it after he shot it. He's jumping around and he was
Yeah.
excited.
Yes. Yeah, and I don't blame him. I mean, you know, I don't think I'll ever get the opportunity to go to the Olympics. I have big hopes and dreams for my kids, but so maybe I'll get to go witness them do it. But myself being 46 years old, I'm stuck to chasing that 30X and chasing elk and mule deer. So
Well, and those are good goals, and it's always nice when you're out with your kids and they make a good stock or something, and make some shots. It's always nice to be there with them when they do that. It's always really cool part is seeing them out there and doing that.
yeah, it is. It is. It's a very special moment as a father, and I can relate to this kind of stuff that my dad went through and his patience. But I tell you, it's funny. I don't really get buck fever anymore. I don't get excited when I'm making a stalk. I don't shake. But when my son and I are coming down on an animal and he has an opportunity to draw his bow back on one, I get pretty excited. I definitely get more excited for him doing it than I do for myself now. So I definitely, yeah, it's a ton of fun, and I'm looking forward to it too. We're actually heading out this weekend. We're gonna go chase some spring bear and some turkey. So I'm looking forward to that. We've been so busy with the target side of things, 3D, and there was the provincials for indoor and all that stuff. So now we're transitioning into 3D and outdoor. So, but three kids, buddy, your time fills up pretty fast.
Yeah, especially when they have sports that's not related to archery.
Yes, yeah. Luckily, all three of my kids love archery, and they're all very, very good at it. But they do have passions everywhere in other places, right? So, my daughter's big into volleyball, and my son's in soccer. So, you gotta make sure that they're putting their 100% into that as well. Because, like I said, if you're gonna do something, you don't want to half-ass it. So, I really try to instill that
Right.
in my kids.
Yeah, you want to make sure you do as best you can. It's give all your effort, and if you fail, at least you can't fault yourself because you just someone else did more than you did.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, well,
know,
and that's it, right? That's where you build success is failing and falling down. And I know I've fallen down far more times than I've ever exceeded. But for me, I find that is really the journey is, success is not really it's not really an achievement, it's more of an outcome. It's if you're willing to do the hard work and fail, fall down and get up and just keep moving forward and keep aiming towards your goal, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It'll happen for everybody if you're honest with yourself and you're willing to do the work it'll happen. Anybody can make anything happen, whatever your goals are, and obviously it's different for other people, right? Like I said, mine was bow hunting, and obviously I have other goals, being a good father and a good husband. That's very important to me. So, but yeah, whatever anybody's doing in life, whether it's archery, target archery, bow hunting, or whatever it is, just yeah, don't be afraid to fail. That's part of it. It's going to make you better in the long run. Yeah, it's all part of it. It's part of our journey.
So what's your practice schedule like when you're just for getting ready for a target event or something?
Um, well, so my the amount I shoot hasn't really changed. I like to shoot around 100 arrows a day. Some days are more, some days are a little less, but I try to shoot 100 arrows a day. So when I throughout the winter, I was really practicing indoor. I'd shoot 2 rounds in the morning, and then I would come home and I would shoot anywhere from another 2 rounds up to, man, I sometimes another 10 rounds in the evening. I'd find myself out and, shooting in the garage till, man, 1 o'clock in the morning and be like, okay, well, I got to go to bed here because I got to work tomorrow. So, but I definitely put the work in, but like I said, I developed a whole new appreciation for target archery. And being a bow hunter, if you're not really trying to if you're not keeping score, if you're not keeping tally on your shots, you can always brush one off. If you're shooting at 30, 40 yards and you have one that's, you have fairly good grouping and then a couple fly out, you're like, oh, maybe the wind caught that. You're not really paying it really close attention to how much you're improving. But if you're at 18 meters and you're trying to hit the X ring, which is, the size of a quarter at best, if you're trying to hit that over and over and over and holding yourself accountable when you don't, you realize how good those guys are that can do it, number one, but how much room for improvement you have as yourself. And it was very humbling the first time I shot a Vegas face at 300. And this is why I always challenge bow hunters to do it, because the Vegas face 300, I find in archery that really is the unit of measure. Um, that kind of set that keeping score at 18 meters at a 300 or a Vegas face for 300, that kind of gives you a benchmark of how good you are and how accurate you are as an archer, whether you're a bow hunter or a target guy. I truly believe that that target is a unit of measure. So when I started out, I think I scored like it was like the early two, it was like 291 or 292, and then instantly I was like, man, I have to change. I have to improve here. And so that's what I did. I had my hunting bow. I was shooting my 5 mm arrows, and I just went to town. I ordered a whole bunch of targets off Amazon, and I just shot a lot of arrows at a lot of paper. And then, obviously you really focus on your shot process, and that's one thing. And I think that was one of the biggest things for me of getting a little better and being able to finally start hitting consistent 300s and work towards a goal of shooting 30 is really focusing down on my shot process. Because like I said, when you're a hunter and you're just focusing on basically on it as an arrow count rather than proficiency. And I'm not talking like we all want to be proficient. And when I talk about, killing animals and putting them, allowing them to have a quick death, you want to be proficient at that. And obviously shooting at an animal is a lot different than shooting at paper. But to be
Yeah.
proficient at target archery, I realized quickly that I'm going to have to really focus and hone in on my shot process and change a few things. And that's what I did. I shoot a thumb button. So I shoot a command style release. I used to pull through the shot, and then I switched to more of like a static punching. And that really helped me out. But it came down to just, not rushing my shot, getting in my stance, drawing back, letting my shoulders sink down, and then coming to a full draw. And even just like the amount of release tension I was putting on my index and my middle finger, I found like that is something that I never paid attention to until I started getting it to target. And like too much on one of the other, it's going to result in, accuracy downrange and little things like that, right? Those little tiny, minute details that you don't really think of as a bow hunter, but when you're trying to shoot consistently at a paper face to hit that 30x or man, just even hit the X, you really have to be cognizant of those little things I found. And so that's definitely helped me. And then recently I've started working on my breathing, right? Breathing in the shot, exhaling, and then just trying to time my shot to break the same time I'm either in or out of one of my breaths. So I've been working on that a lot. It's not easy to do. It's funny, we start breathing from the moment we're born, and when you try to do it and like really focus on doing it and doing something else in the moment, yeah, it's really hard. It's amazing. I never thought how much, I never realized how much our breathing can control or influence our archery shot.
Yeah, we used to do that in with rifle. When I was on a rifle team, you would time it between your breaths. You would have to breathe
Hmm.
in and breathe out. And basically, the kind of technique we'd use is we'd breathe in, breathe out, open our eyes with our eyes closed, and open our eyes. And if we're not on target, we need to adjust our body until we are.
Right, right.
And you can use that same process, with your eyes closed, go through your whole process, get it there. Okay, I'm on target, open your eyes. I'm not on target, so I need to adjust my body until it is. Now
Hmm.
then, I know how to stand. And then a lot of the rifle hunters that shoot the high end, even they're even going between heartbeats.
Yes. Yeah, I know.
Because
Imagine
as your
that.
heart beats, your body will change. So if one time it's when it hits, it's basically on the power stroke, you've expanded and then you relax, expand and relax, then you can feel your heart rate. If you're down there and completely tuned into what your body's doing, you can feel your heart rate pound, not pounding, but I mean, you can feel it beating. And, last times I could actually hear it in my ears
Yeah, yeah,
like
that's
when you're in
true.
a
Yeah.
forest and it's all quiet and no sound, it's like I'm hearing my heartbeat,
Hmm.
because
Yeah,
you're listening so intensely for any animal movement, because just a little leaf. And then the cool part is a leaf start falling and you can hear the leaf going through the air. So
I
how
know.
many have heard a leaf falling in the air? You don't ever think about it. But if
Yeah,
that
yeah,
forest is really quiet, you're tuned into all that stuff. And
yeah.
you can do that as a bow hunter. And like you said, when you want to step that next level, now you have to start worrying about your breathing
Hmm.
and your form, how to actually do it. I have a little sling that I use when I was hunting. I just use it all the time, holds the lower limb. And I go through the process. I open my hand up and then let it relax around it and tip it down. And that's always fits in my hand exactly the same every time. And
Right.
then
Yeah.
I don't hang on to the bow. I don't put my fingers. You see some put the fingers out, which if you can see the difference, put your hand, right behind your thumb, and that part of the bow is supposed to go between the
Yeah. On
finger,
your lifeline
between
there.
the
Yeah.
index and finger, right the lifeline. So put it up there in the pad between your thumb and finger, and do different things with your hand. And no matter where you're at, there's going to be a point you're putting tension on it. Can you consistently put that tension? Just change
Yeah.
just move just your fingers out. Move the fingertip maybe just a quarter of an inch. You'll feel the tension change in your hand.
Yeah.
So you need to
Yeah.
go where there's no tension in the hand and push the heel part of your hand. And
Yeah.
all those things that now I've got that perfect position in the hand. And then I come up and I lean slightly forward. I don't up, raise your arm up and pull down.
Hmm.
That's hard because you're using weak muscle trying to draw. You don't
Hmm.
draw and bring it up. You don't draw it across your chest and raise it up. You put it to the target up there and then lean a little bit forward. And as you draw back, you're standing up straight. What I see a lot of them do
Hmm.
is they'll stand up straight. Next thing you know, they're leaning back.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just everything consistent. And then do I exhale when I'm drawing? So draw, exhale, and then draw back,
Yeah.
breathe in and out. And as I'm breathing out, I'm almost all the way out. That's where I kind of hold and then start the release process. And, it's, I was always taught within 3 to 5 seconds, that bow don't go off, you need to let down, start over
Hmm.
because you
Yeah.
didn't put enough tension on the release or something.
Right, right. Yeah. That was one of the things, same for me, is like started focusing on my breathing. So when I'll come to full draw, I'll exhale. And when I exhale, I find it just allows everything to settle, allows both my shoulders to settle nice. I find my anchor, I breathe in, And then now my pin is going on my target. And then I'm slowly just timing my breathing out. And then when I want to release, that's when I'm releasing. And that was one of the things why I felt like going back to like a more static style shooter. Not to mention too, I found the same thing, you're talking about with your grip hand. I was finding that because I had broken these bones in my hand a few times. I shoot a two finger, so I basically shoot an insatiable three, and I cut the last finger off. But I found when I was rolling it, rotating it, I was sometimes applying more pressure on one finger than the other one, and then pulling it into my thumb to activate the release. And that just wasn't consistent for me. So now I just hold it, allow my fingers to have the same amount of tension, which, through reps, and to find that same amount of tension, what I did was kind of like just blank bailing, going up and like closing my eyes and really just like focusing on like, okay, how much tension is right now is on my two fingers? How much am I holding? And then I allow, my thumb just to squeeze into that barrel, and then it's going to go. And I did that for quite a bit. And all these little tiny, tiny details that I never really paid attention to as a bow hunter, those are the things that really has helped me with my shot process, and really elevate my game in terms of scores.
Yeah, that there's a lot of stuff that you can learn, and definitely helps having a coach.
Hmm.
When
Yeah,
you
I
have
was
somebody
blessed. I
that
had
you're
a
learning.
great mentor. Yeah, I had a great mentor. So my cousin, he was a champ. He was he was a great shooter. He was a tournament shooter, and he won a lot of events. So I was really blessed with him. He kind of, he helped me along the way when I first got into archery, and then as I got more and more into it, he kind of corrected me with a lot of things. So not having bad habits to begin with, I feel they really helped me get to where I am now. And I feel like, I see a lot of these people at 3D events, and they just struggle because they didn't have any help, or what watching stuff on YouTube and Instagram is great and all, but you don't get any feedback back to you. Nobody's actually watching what you're doing. You're kind of just trying to imitate what you're seeing other people do. And there's a lot of stuff on there too that, I'm not saying there's a right way to shoot, because I feel like if there was one right way to shoot it, you look down the line at Vegas and everybody would be shooting the exact same way, right? Like we all have different specs, we're all different, different poundages, different draw lengths, all that stuff. We are, our faces are shaped a little different, so our anchors aren't always going to be the same. And I mean, you look at like Tim, how he shoots, and like if there was a textbook way of like how people told you somebody what not to do, he's doing the opposite, right? He's got a long D loop, and he's punching the trigger, and his thumb's anchored behind his neck, like all these things that you're not supposed to do. But he's still, he's found a way to make it effective and make himself, a great shooter, a world-class shooter. So, yeah, I was just really lucky. I was pretty blessed, and it's kind of funny. When I was going through it, I never really thought about it, but as I started to develop into becoming a more efficient bow hunter, and hanging around better archers, I realized how blessed I was to have that, because I know a lot of guys that didn't have it. And it's one thing to develop a bad habit, but trying to break a bad habit is a lot harder than developing one to begin with. So,
Right.
luckily for me, I didn't have to go through with that. Like I said, I did deal with a little bit of target panic. I kind of nipped that in the bud right away. And, it's one of those things. My son actually, he struggles with it a lot more than I have. And I don't know if it's my inability, I should say, to just tell him, well, just get over it. Just keep shooting like blank bill. But he was shooting a back tension, and he developed a target panic. So we tried taking the click out. It didn't help. So we've actually put him back into a thumb button. It seems to be gone now. He seems to like the command shooting better than a controlled style shot.
Yeah, that's the one disadvantage of one that clicks. As you come back, you're aiming, you're aiming, you're
Hmm.
pulling, click. And what'd you stop doing as soon as you heard that click? You
You
stopped
stop.
aiming because your
Yeah,
attention
yeah, and
focused to the click, to the release.
exactly,
Now then you're not
exactly.
on, now you got to get back on there because at
Yeah,
some point it's going to go off.
exactly. Yeah. And that's what
So
he was doing. He was resetting. So he'd come to full draw, and he'd be working his way through, and then it would click, and then he'd reset. And then no matter what we tried to do to fight that, we just couldn't get through it. And so we switched to, like I said, back to a thumb button. and he's doing really well. So I think we'll just stick with that. And he was kind of bummed out because he wanted, for some reason, he had it in his head that if he was going to be a good shooter, he would have to be shoot a back tension. But then I showed him, I'm like, well, here you go. Look at these guys. Look at Kyle Douglas. He's a thumb puncher. Look what Jimmy Lutz is doing with his wrist strap. I mean, I don't think you could find a podium where Jimmy's not standing on it, right? Like he's always up
Right.
there in the top three, and he's shooting a wrist strap, right? So I think that there's a lot to be said by that. If somebody else is doing it and they're good at it, doesn't mean that you can't do it either.
Well, and just because you're shooting a wrist strap doesn't mean you can't use back tension to release it.
Yeah,
I do it all the
true.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
And then same thing, you're shooting the thumb button. There's
Hmm.
nothing says you have to actually pull that thumb button to fire it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because actually on mine, I don't, it's out there, but I don't have the knurled knob on mine. It's completely gone. I took it off. And I got the button that it fastens to that goes right into that
Yeah.
that spot between the index finger and the thumb, and then I grip it pretty deep in my hand.
Hmm.
And now I've got my hand wrapped around it, and I can take my thumb. It's a Carter chocolate addiction. I can take
Right.
my thumb
Yeah.
and I can put pressure on the bottom of the release. So I've got pressure on there, and now as I pull through, nothing on my hand moves.
Yeah.
Now, if I make a fist, if I tighten it up, I can force it to go off. But I
Right.
have to
Yeah.
think about that. But if in order to do that, I got to think about tightening my hand up. So I
Hmm.
draw through it and just go right through it.
Right. Yeah.
And
Pull through. Yeah.
and then if when I put my wrist strap on, now everybody always puts them on wrong. They put them on their hand. It's not a hand strap; it's a wrist strap. So
Hmm.
your hand, where your wrist bends, your wrist is above that part that bends. That's where you need to
Hmm.
fasten it to. And now then, I like to show people is why you need to. If you take and grab your hand and pull on your hand, where do you feel? You feel it in the wrist separating.
Hmm.
You grab on the wrist itself, and now the pressure goes right straight into your back.
Hmm.
And that's kind of the difference. And I like to tell, I tell this all the time, but when I find somebody's an archer and I ask them to use a wrist strap, and they says, yeah, and it's like, well, I'm gonna give you first lesson free. Quit pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
And they say, what? Yeah, you're pulling the trigger, aren't you? And I'd never seen them shoot. It's like, well,
Yeah.
yeah. How do you make it go off? So
Yeah.
then I'll explain a little bit, and basically it's okay. Take your finger, hold it all the way up. Now aim, aim, aim. Don't think about nonsense. If you break your concentration, you're gonna die. Now move that finger without thinking about it. And then move it. It's like, yeah, I can do it. I'm done teaching them right there because their mind is closed. Then
Yeah.
I'll have them switch. So I'll do it the other the non-dominant hand. Yeah, I can do it. Okay, your lessons started and stopped right there. So
Yeah.
I'm done in just a few minutes because if they can't tell that right there, it's too hard to break. Get their mind open to learn. And then others like, oh yeah, and it's like I had to. Okay, now you're a good student.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
kind of
And I
use
think
that as
that,
a figure out.
yeah, you develop those bad habits and then they're hard to break. Like I said, bad habits are hard to break. It's easier to not develop a bad habit to begin with. But yeah, I think a lot of people with that shooter wrist strap, I don't think they realize that you don't have to actually punch the trigger or pull or, use your finger to activate the trigger. You can just slightly relax it and then just pull into it, and then it's going to go off. So, but that comes down to just help, right? It just comes down to having a good mentor and all that stuff. And I think you even said it, like a lot of people don't have help, and yeah, I mean the archery community is great, but there's not a lot of us, right? There's not. I know up here in British Columbia in Canada, there's not one, on every street corner, there's not archery ranges and all that stuff. There's more hockey rinks than there is archery ranges. I'll say that.
Oh yeah. Well, and you can learn, online as well.
Hmm.
There's ways you can do it pretty good. And one of the things, if you're struggling just starting out, go ahead and join the Arch Talk 101 Facebook group, and on your phone, take a video of you shooting and upload it to us,
Yeah.
and say, hey, what do I need to change on my form? How can
Hmm.
I shoot better? And show pictures of your group, and then we'll take a look at it. And when I was thinking about, doing some teaching online, I was messaging just one guy, and And he said, there's no coach anywhere close by. So I says, I'm thinking about, trying to do some, doing some teaching online. And I says, I'll teach you for free just to, see how well it works. So he had sent me videos and he was getting better because he had no coach. And
Mm-hmm.
then I had another guy that was grouping, maybe 3, 4 inch groups. And I
Mm-hmm.
got on the phone. We did a Zoom call like we're doing now, and I critiqued him and got him going. And about 2 weeks later, he sent me a picture, 3 shots, three arrows touching.
Wow. Good for
And I
him.
spent
Yeah.
45 minutes
Good
when
for
I
you
go on the
guys.
phone.
Yeah.
And I
That's
said, well,
awesome.
do this to
Yeah.
your wrist. It's like, well, I can't because he injured it. So he couldn't do what we normally do with the wrist. So, okay, modify type, and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's the thing. You go through and you modify.
Absolutely.
I teach one way and then I modify it for the individual person.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, I've done martial arts for many years. I studied for almost 20 years. And so I've kind of combined some of that stuff into it. And I teach a completely closed stance.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is if you put all your force directly to your target, you're less likely to have it off a little bit. Someone teach
Mm-hmm.
an open stance with the hands open. As you're putting pressure on that hand, that you're pulling back on your hand, you have to put pressure outward towards the back of your hand in order for it don't collapse on you. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
going straight out, you're pushing straight to the target. And I used to carry around a string because I had my string loop material was a great big roll. So I put a loop that was the size, put it around my thumb, my draw length, and I could practice with that string with the release. And when I had a good release, that string would head straight to the target I was aiming at.
Oh yeah.
And if it
Yeah.
hangs up on your hand or goes somewhere else, your form's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with that said, we don't really teach a lot of beginners that way. Like I help out in Nebraska and Parks, we have um, events for ladies, and we're there for 45 minutes. And if you hold that bow wrong, you will smack your arm.
Mm-hmm.
So we teach a little bit more open stance for that, just for
Yeah.
safety reasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but that works out really good. And then
Mm-hmm.
set the bows up and all this stuff. I actually got some videos on my YouTube channel that goes through some of this stuff because I
Yeah.
actually
That's
put a
good.
lot of my videos for my course out there, and I'm thinking once they get it ready, I'll actually put together get a course on YouTube once it
Yeah.
gets out of the beta stage where you
Yeah.
can
Well,
actually
yeah,
do
I
that.
think it's great if you're helping them out with Zoom calls because, like I said, I mean, it's one thing to watch somebody do something, but you might not know for sure if there's these little things that you're doing wrong. So if you have somebody that with experience can actually watch you in return, then they can, like you said, you know, you can kind of like fit it to the archer specifically because if they're watching Levi Morgan, who's got like a 31-inch draw length and his anchor is wherever, and then they're like, okay, I got to do that, but their body and their mechanics aren't built for that. Or if they're like
Right.
watching Jesse Broadwater and their arms really buggered, in is too short, or they're watching Chris Perkins and he's sitting way back in the stance, but those things work for those guys, and a lot of that might be specific to their body type, right?
Right.
So that's why it's really nice if what you guys are doing, if you can watch them, and then you can kind of be like, okay, well, your draw length maybe it's a little bit too long. Let's try this, and let's just try different things. So then they're actually getting feedback rather than just watching somebody who makes it look easy and tell them what they do because I don't think like myself, I don't think there's one right correct way of doing it. I think we're all just such unique people, our faces are different or some people have long necks, some people have thick necks, some people have wide jaw bones, some people have thin jaw bones and like even our noses, and how they line up on, how our anchor points line up on our face and where your anchor point is. Is there a right way to put an anchor point? Well, it's more important that it's consistent. Just have the most consistent,
Yeah.
find the place where you can repeat that over and over and over and over again. Find something that's going to work for you so you can make it consistent, do the exact same thing. Everything else, you can tune a bow, you can set up a bow to everybody. But if you're not doing the same thing over and over, if you're not repeating the exact same process, like we talked about earlier, like, breathing, falling into your shot and like timing your heartbeat, all these little things, that's what makes you a really great archer. But at the beginning, you just want to work on consistency. You could build a bow to fit anybody, right? Like you can make the bow do
Right.
whatever you want, especially with these new bows now. I mean, you can pretty much make these bows do the compound bows anyway. You can make them do whatever you want, but if you're not doing the exact same thing over and over, if every time you're shooting your anchor is a quarter of an inch one way and then half an inch this way, and you got more you got more face pressure on your string, it's gonna be really hard to be consistent. So just working on those little things, like, hey, just if this is comfortable, okay, do that. We're going to adapt a new style of shooting specifically for you. But the biggest thing is you just got to keep doing it, man. You got to keep doing that over and over again. And if it's comfortable, I know Matthias Fullerton told me, he said, as long as it's comfortable, you're going to be able to repeat it, right? And it's true. If it's comfortable, you're most likely going to be able to repeat that thing over and over. It's something that you just aren't can't get comfortable no matter how many times you do it. If you're just messed up in your stance and it's hurting your back because maybe you got a funny arch to your back, then it's not going to work, right? It's just you're going to find
Right.
it really hard to be consistent.
Yeah, and you don't have to go out and buy the most expensive bow. You
No,
know,
exactly.
say let's say you have $1,000 to get a bow. Spend $300-400 on a bow and spend the other 700 on lessons.
Hmm.
Well, first spend about 100 on a release because that's your biggest part of it there, and then the rest spend it on lessons because you can take a pawn shop bow and shoot X's with it,
Oh
even
yeah,
if it's not
100%.
tuned correctly.
Yeah.
Because it's not the tuning that makes the difference, it's your consistency. Now,
Exactly.
granted, a better bow is going to help you shoot better. Straighter arrows are going to help you to shoot, tighter groups.
Hmm.
Um, just to show, I always shoot the comp pros is what I normally always shoot. Um, a buddy of mine he was shooting some Beemans, I think it was. The brand didn't matter, but he was like a 3,000 straightness arrow. And he's grouping really good. I said, Jim, here, shoot these arrows. Because that's the same length as his, so he could shoot them just fine. And you know what? That group tightened up to about an inch from
Hmm.
the 3 inch group he had before. And the
Yeah,
only
I
difference
believe it.
was one, he was shooting vanes in 3,000s. I was shooting feathers in 1,000s. Vanes and feathers. Feathers are more forgiving. I've actually
Hmm.
had holes out of vanes or feathers and be just fine. Take and mess up a vane. Yeah, they don't
Oh
fly
yeah.
very good at all.
No, you're
And they
you're
make a
cutting
lot
them
of
off.
noise.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. It's just about being consistent. And yeah, when you're new, you don't have to worry about, I mean, I'm going to say that the American dollar goes a lot further than the Canadian dollar. So you might not be able to
Oh,
find a bow for $300 up here, but it'll get you maybe lunch or dinner. That's about it. So, um, no, but anyway, but yeah, there's like, even with Facebook and all these archery groups that are available online, you can find a lot of great deals. And a lot of guys, a lot of experienced archers are getting new bows every year, so they're selling their old flagship bow. So you'll be able to go on there and find a 1 or 2 year old flagship bow fully set up. You're going to get a great deal on it, and that's a good bow. Yeah, you like you said, you don't need the top of the end line gear.
no.
Later on, if you become really competitive, that might make the difference. If you're going to these events and everybody else is shooting the .001 arrows and you're sitting there shooting .006, you know, these things might make a difference later on. But at the beginning, it's just about building a shot process, having fun, and shooting arrows. That's what it's all about, right? That's why we do
Right.
it, because it's fun.
Well, and that's why they make the lower straightness arrows. The beginner, they're not going to know the
Exactly.
difference. Just like,
Absolutely.
when I was selling bows when I had my store, we're looking at the PSC Nova, back
Hmm. Yeah.
24
Long
years
time
ago.
ago. Yeah.
Um, and I always set mine up because you go to Walmart and buy the bow, same bow, um, for cheaper money. Well,
Uh-huh.
when you look at it, mine also included 6 arrows. It included, a low end release, at that time, like one of the low True Far Patriot ones, which is the $20 release at that time.
Yeah.
And, so you had 6 arrows. The only thing you didn't have was a case. You had, you know, pretty much everything you needed except the case.
Hmm.
And I had some soft cases. I never carried hard ones because Walmart sold them for $5 more, and I could buy them wholesale. So I just never carried them.
Yeah.
And you can't price compare because mine also include being set up and
Hmm.
shooting instruction because I teach you how to shoot. Because I figured
Yeah.
you need to learn how to shoot, get you started. And they were the lower end arrows, like I think they're the 6,000 straightness arrows or three. I forget
Yeah.
which ones I had at the time. And everything's all set up, ready to go.
Yeah.
And, get you going. And if you wanted a higher end one, go for it. And,
Hmm.
my thought was if I sell you a $300 bow or $1,000 bow and you don't like it, I feel bad about the $1,000 bow sitting in your closet. I don't feel so bad about the $300 bow in your closet because you can still sell it for a good part of what you paid for it. But
Yeah. Easy to
um,
get your return. Yeah, I think that that is undervalued, and I see that a lot where they'll go on to like Cabela's or Bass Pro Shop and they'll buy a bow that's on sale, and then it's going to show up at their door, and then now what? What are you going to do with it now? Now you're going to take it to a shop that could have sold it to you for $200 more, and with that you would have got some arrows that were cut properly to your draw length, which was
right,
now set up by the shop down there. They're going to set up your site. They're going to help you pick, set your pins up. They're going to help you with all that stuff. You're going to end up spending more time in lost arrows and doing all this stuff if you try to do it yourself rather than just go spend a little bit of money, go down to your shop, talk to the guys down there. They're going to set you up. And so that's why I really think, these archery shops is you got to support your archery shops, man. You got to get down there and meet the guys because when you need help, they're the ones that are helping you. It's not ordering stuff online. It's not going to Bass Pro or Cabela's and nothing against those big stores, but they're not going to be helping you. When if your D loop breaks and you're heading out the day before to go hunting, or if you're struggling with third axis or you don't even know what third axis is, you could take it to them and they're going to help you with it. Or if you maybe your peep sight moved, or even if you started out at 50 pounds and now you want to go up to 55 or 60, because when you do that, everything changes again, right? Your pin gabbing is
yes,
going to change, your peep sight's going to change, all this stuff is going to change. So building a relationship, if you're going to be in archery, building a relationship with your pro shop, I think is to be valued.
right. I know I'm here I live in eastern Nebraska, just outside Omaha, and I worked at Cabela's and Bass Pro both before they merged into one.
Mhm.
And fortunately, while I was there, when I was over at Bass Pro, there was three other bow techs that had a lot of experience. Between the four of us, we probably had 80 years of experience working on bows.
Mhm.
Before I worked there, I had my own shop,
Right.
and
Yeah.
you know, we get all kinds of experience, including setting up a bow to shoot two arrows at one time. That was me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I
Not
had my shop,
recommended.
yeah, well, as it turns out, the guy was a motivational speaker, and he called all the other shops and says, "Can you set my bow up to shoot two arrows?" They said, "No, just
Yeah.
no." I said, "Okay, that's interesting."
Yeah.
So he brought it in. If it was a center shot design riser, it would have been real difficult to do. But it was the older
Hmm.
style, back 24 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
still had some of those and used the stick on rests. And
Right.
we
Yeah.
played around. He wanted to use a release, and so we played around and everything. And I learned a lot about how to correctly set up your loop to get the best arrow flight.
Hmm.
And we played around, and by the time we got done, the distance between the two arrows, every shot was no less than an eighth of an inch. I mean,
Wow.
it was no more than eighth of an inch because we figured
Amazing.
out how the one arrow affects the other arrow and how to put your loop on, which translates into do not tie a knot above your arrow and put your loop above that knot and below your arrow because that forces the arrow to have the center where the force is going at the top of the arrow, not in the center of the arrow. So
Hmm.
I tell people it's like, okay, take a pencil, set it on the table. Now put your finger on the eraser and push towards the tip of the pencil.
Hmm.
What's your pencil do? Move straight. Now shift your finger over just a 16th of an inch, and now push. What's that arrow do? It starts turning to the side.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, you're
that's why you
steering in
want to
there.
have your loop above and below, no gap. When I put them on, one thing, when I put them on, you have to cut them off, cannot untie them. But I tie a loop on the top, I tie a loop on the bottom, and then I actually squeeze the knots all together. And then with the arrow on the string, now I pull really hard to get them there. I'll put an Allen wrench or something in there and grab the string above and pull. So it's
Uh-huh.
the knots are really tight. Key is wax your string before you do that. Um, that makes the knots way tighter. And now there
Hmm.
is no play in that knock. It cannot move up or down. Now, there's another whole deal on setting up, the rest correctly with a center shot design riser. But lasers and levels and sets them all up and you're perfect. But
Hmm.
uh, and then it's easy to set up the sight as well for the windage. You just down the string and down to the tip, so your string covers the arrow to the tip and line up your sight so you can't see your pins.
Oh yeah.
And now your windage is set perfect because your arrow is set perfect because we put a laser on it, take the sight off, put a laser on it, shine it back on the string and out to the tip, and it should go right tip. Adjust your rest so it's right to the tip. That's perfectly center shot. And then when you tie on your loop, you want to have your riser level, and then put a level on the end of your arrow and
Hmm.
adjust where that is going to go until
Hmm.
that is level as well. That tip of the arrow is level. Now you're square right angle. That's a perfect thing to go right straight through the arrow. All your force is delivered straight to the arrow. And then the way I teach with the closed stance, now all your force is going from the nock to the tip. Everything is going all straight lines. That's the max amount of force into that arrow.
Yeah. 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 That's what you want. Yeah. Definitely.
Kind of a long-winded thing, but it's
Yeah.
if you don't have the right stuff, know how to do it, well, you're gonna have somebody show you how to do it because there's a lot to it in doing that. And you mentioned third axis. If you don't have the right jig, you can't really set it anyway. You got to
Yeah.
have the
I
jig
mean,
that you can set. And
yeah. Yeah. Unless you're crawling up on your roof and shooting arrows down to the ground. But I mean, your neighbors, they don't appreciate that too much. So
no, for just for those that don't know, on your third axis, your sights, you have your windage and your elevation on level. Now, what does that bubble do? You have to have a bubble on your sight, and that has to be at your when you're horizontal and everything else set there. Your bubble needs to be level. Now, what
Mhm.
happens when you tilt that bow down? Does the level stay in the center? If it doesn't, that's your third axis. You might have to shim one part of your sight if you
Mhm.
don't have an adjustment for it, which I've had to do, take a small shim and put it with one of the bolts to get it there. Some of
Yeah.
your higher end sites, you can actually adjust that third axis to get that. So now you're down and up. Because if you're
Yeah.
pointing down and the bubble's off, now you're canting your bow one side or the other to get it
Hmm.
level. And
Hmm.
now then, um, if you take your
Yeah. Your
pins are
windage
straight
is
up
going
and
to be
down,
off.
turn them sideways, as you go different distances, it goes off the side, not straight up and down.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really detrimental if you're running a slider. But yeah, I guess, it's something you take for granted. I remember like 5, 6 years ago, you never even heard anybody talk about third axis. But now I think most of the sites, even the lower sites, they have adjustments for third axis. But yeah, it is important, especially if you're tree stand hunting. You want your third axis to be dialed in because, yeah, if you're holding your bow in front of you and everything is level, but then like you said, you lean down, at a 35, 45 degree angle, but now because the plane of what your level was on at the beginning, as you move that down, that's going to change, right? Because you're actually changing the trigonometry of that housing. So yeah, you want to make sure that's on for sure. And that's a good tip too, shimming your sight off your riser, because that's one of the things that we used to have to do. Fortunately now, like I said, with all the newer, the most of them now they have that third axis adjustment. I guess the if you're buying like a 40 or $50 site, it probably won't have it, like one of
No.
the cheaper beginner trophy ridges. But I think at that point, if you're I wouldn't worry about or third axis. Sorry, I would just be shooting arrows. Work on, like we were talked about earlier. Work it on consistency. Build a shot process that you can repeat, and just throw arrows down range and have fun.
Yeah, and the closer range isn't quite that far off because your pins aren't that far off because you're using the top one anyway. But if you're really canting it one way or another, you can make it quite a bit off. But
Yeah.
that's where it's important to have your form. You're up in your form. Now you just bend at the waist. Nothing changes. If nothing changes, you're going up and down, then you're going to be okay without a. I don't even look at my level anymore because I've done it so much that it's like
Mm.
I don't even look at it. If I do look at it, it's like, oh, okay, I'm still level. So I don't even pay attention more.
Yeah.
I have one on
Yeah.
there. I never look at it anymore. But it's good
Yeah,
when you
and
first
that's
learn
one
it.
thing you can, yeah, as you shoot more, a lot of these little things you'll just do. It's like getting out of bed and putting your feet in the ground, right? It's you're going to be able to tell if your bow's level. Just, if you're canting too far one way or the other, you're going to notice more string pressure. If you're holding on the corner of your nose and you're pulling your bow into you, you're going to notice that string pressure. But that just comes with reps. That comes with doing it a lot. I mean, it's the same with a bad shot. I mean, if you shoot enough, you could tell if that arrow is going to be good or bad before it even leaves the string. Just you just know what it's going to be like. But that just comes with practice and doing it a lot. But I think to get there to begin with, yeah, just work on the little things, work on your shot process, build something that's repeatable. And then, yeah. And if you have any struggles, reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out to those people that have more experience. And if you can, go to your local pro shop. Supporting the local guys is, for us, like Bass Pro Cabela's up here in Canada, the ones I know of anyway, they don't have like a pro shop for archery in them. They do sell archery stuff, but it's basically you buy it and you're out the door. So they're not going to give you a
Yeah.
lot of help with it.
Yeah, that's the problem with those is, you don't know if you have somebody that's there. Now, when I left Bass Pro to go to Cabela's, when I got there, the lead in archery, I'm teaching him how to do this stuff. They had nobody there. And
Hmm.
then shortly after I was, in some of my training, John, one of the guys that you worked with at Bass Pro, he come in and interviewed, and I went in right in the interview and I says, if you don't hire him, you're stupid. That's what I told the hunting manager, the archery manager,
Yeah,
because I knew how good he was. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
and if he's looking, we need him here, and they hired him, and he actually stayed longer than I did, and he's not there anymore. But you don't know when you go to any of those box stores, but you go to, like
hmm,
you said, go to the extra pro shop, and the chances they have somebody there that don't know what they're doing is basically inverse of what you go if you go to a box store and find someone who knows what's going on.
yeah,
So
exactly.
there are ones, and in case, whereas at Bass Pro, we had people that had shops and we had people that knew what was going on. But now if you go into Cabela's, you're lucky to find somebody that's even shot.
Yeah, I know. It's
Last one was like,
terrible. Yeah.
well, he actually applied for some of this. I shot a bow when I was a kid. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Or,
then
or if you have any questions about axle to axle length or draw poundage or any of these simple things, and they look at me like, I don't know what that is you're telling me. I'm just waiting for 3 o'clock so I can get out of here.
yeah. Well, and last time I went out to Cabela's, he shot a recurve, but he didn't
Oh
really know
yeah,
anything about shooting compounds. So I actually
yeah,
taught
yeah,
him a little bit while I was there.
yeah,
So at least had then he's going to, oh, I'm going to try it out.
yeah,
Which when I
yeah,
go in there, if I want to try a release, I just need to open the cabinets and get the release out and try it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. Yeah,
But yeah, that was um, yeah, good point. Just make sure you go to um, some place that knows what doing, and if you don't have a good pro shop next to you, because there's places where there's no good pro shop within 100 miles, and are you going to drive there just to get some attention when you don't need to?
mm,
That's where joining groups like my Arch Talk 101 group, that Facebook group, I'm in there. I managed a group because I started it and I created it, and
mm,
I'm the only admin on there. But there's a lot of other people out there that do stuff, and I had one lady was asking something about shooting. She's shooting a recurve and not consistent at all. So I said, record it. Let me look at it. Well, every shot, the anchor point or release was different.
yeah. That's
Sometimes
tough.
it just released them. Sometimes the hand went out. Sometimes it went up.
Yeah,
Sometimes it went back.
yeah,
And every time you do something different, the arrow hits in a different spot. And it's like, so, I responded back to her. She never, did another video or anything, but I was like, hey, this is what I'm seeing wrong with them. Because nice thing is I could
yeah,
download it and I could put it in my video editor I use when I do YouTube videos, because I pretty much edit all those. And I can actually bring it up and I can do frame advance. I can just hit like my arrow key and go frame at a time and watch
Right.
everything if I need to. I can stop it and pause it, rewind it, and look at it, and so I can see that stuff really well. Now, when I
Yeah.
first started in '95 learning back tension release, that was on VCRs. You recorded on a VCR because cameras didn't weren't
Yeah.
existent in phones.
No, I know. Well, yeah. I mean, we didn't have, so we weren't running around with cell phones recording everything like we are now.
No. And if you did have a phone, not sure if those past the bag phones, but if the phone, it only made calls. There was no texting. It was just flip it
Mhm.
open, punch the buttons, and call.
Yeah.
And so now with the phones, like my phone here is probably got more power than a lot of your digital uh, cameras.
Yeah. Yeah. Same with
And
mine. I got the new one and yeah, I can record in 8K now. So yeah, they're pretty impressive.
yeah, and you can do. I haven't ever tried it, but you can do slow motion video.
Hmm.
I haven't tried it to see how that works, but I can slow it down in my editor, and it's just so much easier. And it's just have somebody video it, and I actually
Yeah.
have a video on how to take a good video, because you not only do you need the front view, you need the side view, you need the back view. If you can get above, because then you can see what's going on above. You know,
Yeah.
do it over multiple shots, and then just upload them to the group,
Yeah.
or get a hold of me on YouTube or something. And I'm not hard to find.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll have to check out the group and join in.
Yeah, because I'm always looking for interesting comment, and I don't allow people to sell in it, so that when you get in the group, you don't have to worry about somebody trying to sell you stuff. Now you might see once in a while a post like somebody likes to come in try and sell T-shirts. As soon as I see them, they're deleted and banned from the group because it's not for selling.
Yeah.
Now, if you have an archery event, you're more than welcome to post that. I'll probably, when I see it, I'll pin it to the top. You know,
Yeah.
that's providing value to the group. That's what the groups, and I got another group too that, if you're not providing value to the group, yeah, I'm not going to let you post anything like that. And I just want to keep it, clean, and all content. And like I always say, the only stupid question is the one you didn't ask.
Yeah. Well, that's just it too. And if you got a good group of people, then everybody's willing to support each other and help each other. It goes a long way, and it definitely helps. It helps somebody not put that bow in the closet and not pull it out, right? It keeps them shooting, and I think that's a big part. I imagine how many archers have bought a bow, shot it, struggled, and never shot it again. And you think if we could get all those people back into shooting, how much more popular the sport would be.
Yeah. And that's exactly why when I sold a bow, I gave shooting instructions with it. And
Yeah,
back 20 some years ago, there was $100 an hour is what I charged. Now,
yeah,
normally you wouldn't need a whole hour because I'd get your stuff, you'd work on it and come back, and I didn't stand there for an hour. You'd
yeah,
come back and check, let them practice, and come back and practice. And one of the things I do to teach them you don't know what a good shot feels like until you know what one feels like because you're shooting,
yeah.
you
Until
don't
you
know.
execute it. Yeah,
So I would tell them to draw back and aim, because we'd have a target, aim and put your finger above the trigger. Do not pull the trigger. And now they're aiming, 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 and I'd pull the trigger. And 9 times out of 10, it hit the target. You're right where there's aiming.
yeah, because they're just worried
And,
about the
and
pin,
it's
not
like,
everything else.
oh, the surprise, like that is what it should feel like every time you shoot. If it
Yeah,
doesn't, you're doing something wrong.
yeah,
And now then they know what a good release. And now then after a while, it's like, oh yeah, I messed that shot up. I messed that shot up, and they figure out what's going. The next thing you know, they're doing better and better. And I know we started off when I was learning back tension release, back in '95. Um, we were standing 5 feet from the backstop and shoot with our eyes closed. We'd shoot, we just lean forward, grab our arrow, and pull it out. And it
mhm,
was, if your bow was way off, you might bend some arrows because it was a lot of aluminums at the time. Um, but we would shoot with our eyes closed, and we'd figure all that out, and then open our eyes, and the form would go away.
yeah,
So we go eyes closed. Finally, we could open
yeah,
our eyes, and it wouldn't go away. It's like, okay, good. And then you'd start doing something else like on, go away, back, eyes closed, open them, okay, and then back, just work your way through it until you got the process down. And
Yeah. Yeah.
that was always a challenge. And I know the first time I heard about back tension release, like, well, how do you know when it's going to go off if you're not pulling the trigger? Yeah, I didn't understand it until I
Yeah.
learned it. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, now I
That's the
see.
point. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
biggest thing is your job in archery is to store energy and aim.
Hmm.
That's all you got to do.
Yeah. 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 No, that's it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's why it's good to have pro shops. I mean, I can't stress that enough. It's good to have these guys there, and if you don't support them, they're going to be gone. So that's why it's
Right.
important to support them.
Well, we used to have one over in Council Bluffs. They closed, but they closed because they inherited some money, and it's like, okay, we're gonna do something different.
Yeah.
And then there was, I think, of course, my shop and two other shops. There's like three in town. Now there's just one, and they're
Yeah.
not even in Omaha anymore. They're down in another smaller town just south of here.
Yeah. It's too bad.
Because the landlord, oh, we're gonna double your rent because you actually got two bays. They've been there for
Oh,
decades, and then so they moved.
yeah.
So
That's too bad.
if you need archery, Cabela's is close to me here. It's on one side of Omaha. Cabela or Bass Pro is on the other side of the river, way on the west end of Council Bluffs. Easy to get to, and then the other one's down in Plattsmouth. And I don't go down there too often anymore, but I haven't been to their new shop, but I should probably go down there sometime just cause. But
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I have everything I need. I don't really need to go to a shop because I've got old bows and I still keep shooting them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my hunting bow is a
Yeah.
2001 PSE Carrera, and my target bow is a 2003 Scorpion.
Hmm. Yeah.
And
Old
then,
school.
yeah, and then both my boys, they actually, all three of my kids have PSE. Uh, I think it's Excalibur.
Oh, yeah.
Um, my youngest and my daughter has, and my son's got, I forget which he had one. He's got a different one. He had one of my other bows that I had, I think. So I can't remember now. It's been so long since I've seen them, but um, they all shoot PSE. I have a PSE recurve, but I do have a
Right.
bear. Um,
Oh, yeah.
what
Yeah. I've
it's
shot a
in the
lot
snow
of bear and
camo.
PSC. Yeah.
It was uh, at that time it was a $900 bow, just plain bow, no accessories. And at that time when John and I worked there, Cabela's would take all the returns that they got, all the returns, and put them in a big four by four cube and ship them to
Oh, yeah.
us.
Oh,
And
really?
then we'd go through them all, and we sold used bows there too. And we would take and put them together and put them in our used bow rack. And we had a bunch of some that were they're not worth fixing. They were only like a couple $100 bow, and then you put much into it, it wasn't worth it. And so we cut the top and bottom of the riser off, just had a handle, and you could mount sights on them. We put a little bent bar in the front of it and put it on a little hook. Then we put sights on them, so you could pick the sight up and hold it and look at it. And they're still
Yeah.
using them.
Yeah. 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 I mean, if it works, right? It ain't broke, don't
Yeah,
fix it.
yeah. What are you going to do with an old bow that you really can't do anything with? And you take different pieces and make them work. And
Yeah. 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 It's harder to do that with the new ones. They're all
yeah,
pretty they're all engineered. Like the engineering on all these new bows, it's man, every year I wonder how are they gonna do anything? Like what's next, right? And then all of a sudden somebody will come out with something new. And so
yeah,
it's pretty exciting to
yeah.
see what the new advancements are.
But when you get in two or three bows that are identical bows, just each have different problems. And if it's a string, well, I make strings, so I need a new string, and there was a dampener on the bare bow and something else that I fixed all that, and now it just sits downstairs. I didn't do anything with it. Once I got it
Yeah.
together, once I got it where it could be mounted up and shot, I just never bothered to fix it up anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. The first bow I ever bought was a bear, and that was oh man, what was the name of it? I don't even remember the name of it. It was quite a while ago. So Yeah, yeah, they're good. I mean, Bear's a good brand.
Yeah, they've been around a long time.
Yeah, they
You know,
have.
like
Yeah,
PSE and they've been around for a long time, and
yeah,
Matthews now has been around for a long time, and I figured that's what you're shooting because that's what your hat says.
yeah, yeah. So I'm shooting the Lift X and the title. So yeah, great bows. I've shot a lot of shot shoot Matthews for a while now. Before that, I was shooting a few PSEs and then Hoyt. I was a long time Hoyt shooter, and I don't know why I switched. I think I went from PS shooting Hoyts, and then I went to shoot that Prime, the dual cam, when they first came out with that dual cam bow. I was shooting that, and then I didn't like that dual cam, and then I just what was I shooting after that? I think I was shooting a Hoyt again, and then I shot a couple PSEs, and then yeah, I mean, a long time, mostly Hoyts, and I'd say Matthews are the brands I've shot the most. Matthews now for a few years, but I mean, all these bows now are so good. There's not really any brand that's better than the others. I think it's just what you prefer to shoot.
Right. Well, and what fits you because each bow model is going to be
Yeah,
a little bit
absolutely.
different. I
Yeah,
know when I
yeah,
had
and
my
where you're shooting and what you're shooting, like
right.
being where I am, I like a longer axle to axle bow. I feel it helps hold steadier in the wind, which is, I'm shooting a lot in the wind. So I feel a longer axle to axle bow helps me just hold steady in the wind. But if you're a tree stand hunter, like I was talking about my brother in Alberta, he does mostly tree stand hunting, so he prefers a shorter axle to axle bow. So yeah, you're right. It's what fits you and what you're using it for, I think.
Yeah, that's it. I know when I had in my store, PSC bought Browning Archery,
Hmm.
and they come out with a Browning that had counter rotating cams. So one cam rotated one way and rotated another way.
Yeah,
And I was like,
I
that
remember
is
that.
cool. I think I might shoot that bow. So I set it up and I worked and I worked. I could not get that to fit me right. I wanted to shoot it and I just could not. For some reason, it did not fit my body type. I could
Yeah,
not. So I ended up selling it to I forget who I sold it to now, but I ended up selling it and it was I thought it was just cool. That
yeah,
you
yeah.
have two
There's a lot
cams
of
and they
that old
rotate different
stuff.
ways and
I know, super cool. And there's a lot of those. Like, remember PSC had the shoot through cables? They had the cables running. They
yeah.
didn't have a cable guard. The cables went down one on each side, and you shot through them. I remember that one. That was pretty neat. But I'd love to get my hands on some of those old relics just to have them. They're like collector's items now.
Yeah. Well, like my hunt mount PSC Carrera is a 2001
Yeah, yeah, that's an
and
old bow. You don't see those very often.
and it's kind of interesting. I wanted to get a Matthews, so I kind of saved up and I finally got one. I got the Matthews Q2. And so I'm going through and I'm setting it up. And, this is before I really knew how to set them up. So I go down the range, shoot it through paper, which, you know, back then they thought, that's the ultimate in setting up your bow. I shot a perfect hole. And then when I bought the store, part of going down to the tech school, part of the cost was included a bow. So I go down and I tell them, it's like, well, I don't know which good. I'm shooting a Matthews Q2. Which one's is good or better than that one? And then they said the Carrera. Well, for one, the Carrera is 320 feet per second is what it's rated at, and the Q2 is like 305 or something like that. Not that speed makes a difference because I didn't care about speed, but after shooting that PSE for a while, I was like, oh man, it's I had no problem selling the Matthews, because it
Yeah,
was it was every bit as good as the other bow, and I still have it, and I probably never get rid of it.
no, no, definitely don't hold on to that thing for sure.
And then the next one, my Scorpion, they come out with uh, one with the cable and a control cable and a string.
Yeah,
And then one year, and then the next year they come out with a single cam. The next year they dropped it. So when I was on the sticker, it only lists two string links, but I needed three. So I got a
right.
hold and they says, okay. So they said, send me the serial number and they come back and tell me what length of the three were supposed to be. because I had to get a hold of them and give them my serial number so they knew which bow it was. And like,
Yeah, right.
I don't know what size. I want to make sure I know what size it is because you can't always tell because strings stretch.
Yeah, yeah. Well, especially back then, that was a long time ago, and like the strings have gotten so much better now than they were back then. That yeah, string stretch was a real problem back then. I think it was
Well,
Winner's Choice that came out, and then they started using. They were were they one of the first ones? That were that was kind of leaps and bounds. That was before Pete. Um, but yeah, yeah, I just know like the strings they have now, man. You can't even compare even a bow from 4 or 5 years ago. It's hard to compare the two.
yeah. Well, I know the strings that PSA used to come with. When my staff shooters would get one in, they wouldn't do nothing to it till I made them a new string. I use
Yeah,
BCY's 8125, which I
right,
never had a problem with them stretching. Uh, Partially is the technique I use for making them. Because if I do two colors, I'm going to tie the two colors together when I'm wrapping them. We go change colors. And when I get done, I'm going to tie the other ends together. So it's one continuous loop. And then I put them on a jig, I put a lot of pressure on it. So now I've got all the strands kind of pre-stretched together. They're all the same length. Because I tried doing them individually, and it just never get the exact same length. And it's like now you got one tighter than the other one, and I just start tying them together and just do that. And I put them under pretty massive amount of stretch before I even start serving the ends. And I never
yeah,
have any trouble with them moving or anything after that.
yeah. I think quality, like the quality of the string maker, I think that plays a huge role into the strings themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Now there's so many people making them out here that are really good making strings, but I'm never going to buy string because I got enough string material to probably make me a new string for the rest of my life every
Ah,
week.
there you go.
I'd
Yeah, right on.
have to get more end loop material, but still,
Yeah.
I got rolls and rolls of multiple different colors for compounds as well as recurves.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, I've got the recurve string as well because I'd make those as well, and that's kind of neat. I had a unique string I made for mine. It was actually three colors and I braided them.
Oh yeah.
And then one of the guys used to come to my shop all the time. I guess I don't remember it, but I made one for his wife and needed a new one. And he was getting in to try and make them. And it's like he could not figure out how I did them.
Yeah, it's
So
tips of the
I
trade.
had to put a little video together and tell him how to do it so he could make a new string for his wife.
That's funny.
Well, and then we get custom strings too. I had one that I made for my shooter. He had, I think it was a quantum. It was one of the good vibrations patterns, which is the silver, the blue, and I forget what other colors was in it. And so I made him a red and green string. And the way I twisted them, I didn't twist the normal twisting. I twisted them inside of each other, so it
Right.
formed separate strands. So when you put the string together, it formed little V's.
Hmm.
And he ended up getting it stolen out of his house.
Oh, no way.
Well, it ended up at one of the shops, and one of the guys in there says, "I think that's Randy's bow." So the owner calls me up and I says, "Well, here's what the string looks like." Yep. And then I need to get the serial number, so I had to get a hold and find out. It wasn't hard because I think I only sold one that pattern. So I got that, he got his bow back. But because
Right.
had the pattern, had that unique string, it's like, okay. And then if you look on the grip, there's a little worn spot because his thumb used to wear calluses on his thumb used to wear a little spot on the grip.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, well, it's unique. And the guy that had it isn't the one that stole it, but the guy that stole it had owed him some money, so he just gave him the bow instead.
Oh, really? That's funny.
So he's paid in stolen bows.
Oh,
But
that's funny.
you make them unique, and when I make strings, you guys say, "Well, what color? What? Black?" No, I'm not doing a plain black string. Now, if your bow's all black, then I would. But no, you got camel bow. Pick two colors, any two
Yeah.
colors you want. And I was like,
Right.
oh,
No,
oh,
that.
same price. And same thing because I didn't buy any pre-fletched arrows. I had
Mhm.
feathers and veins. You could pick whatever color you wanted, and of course, feathers a little bit more than the veins because they cost more. And pick your colors. That way you can have whatever scheme you want instead of going to the box stores and well, okay, now they're two yellow and a white. Now this time it's um, two whites and an orange or whatever color you. And everybody has the same thing because you only got like two options when you get there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stories of people when they come into the shop and what they've
Oh, I
done
bet.
and
Yeah.
I charge $20 to put the bow in a press. Unless I'm just putting it here to hold it while I'm doing something else. But if I'm pressing the bow, it was $20 charge. That was
Yeah, that's fair.
20 some years ago.
Yeah.
Now it's gonna
Yeah,
be
it's
more
well,
than
it's
that. But
time. Yeah, it's time, and
I
people
did,
got to appreciate the time that it takes to
yeah.
do all this stuff and the time to learn all this stuff because it takes a lifetime to learn it all.
Oh yeah. And sometimes when I had to work on the bows, it's like you don't want to watch what I have to do to this to get it to work. Like a screw and a cam's twisted out or stripped out. Well, I got my drill. I'm drilling it out on the cam. Don't watch that. But I had a kid and his dad come in, and the limbs were out of the pockets, kind of twisted a little bit because he had cranked them out. He couldn't pull the weight. He cranked them out, and so I charged him. That's when I get ready to put it in the press it. I said, you need to stand back in case this comes apart. I press it, got him back in there, put him down to the lowest weight it could be, and I told him, you can't change it. And he said, because they went to one of the other shops and they had to do the same thing. So I charged him like $20. I said, next time it's $40. $20 to do the work and $20 for stupid fee. Because you've been told twice now not to crank them limbs out.
Yeah, I feel like that happens a lot. I know a lot of
His
people who
dad
do.
laughed and it's like, because that's what I told him. And there's things you could do. You can make longer or shorter strings and cables, and you can change the max draw weight
Oh
of
yeah,
that bow
definitely. Yeah,
by changing
or draw.
that.
You can adjust your draw length too by adjusting your string or your
Yeah.
cables. Yeah,
Yeah. And I'd do that too, if you need a shorter draw length and shorter pounds, then you can adjust them. And I forget which way you go now because that's been since I had to do that, it's been yeah, probably 22 or 23 years ago.
yeah,
So
yeah. If you want to shorten it, do your cables. Want to lengthen it, do your string.
yeah, yeah, it's like I'd have to think about it, but it's too late at night to think about that kind of stuff yet.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great talking with you. It's been a lot of fun and
Yeah, well, I
I
appreciate you having me
enjoyed
on.
it.
Yeah, I had a blast. It's always nice to chat and share archery and hunting stories. Like I said at the beginning, my passion's bow hunting. I have a whole new respect, and I really do love the challenge of target hunting, but or it's not target hunting, target shooting targets, shooting paperface. But my passion is bow hunting. So whenever I get the opportunity to talk to like-minded people like myself, I really appreciate it. So I do appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, we'll have to have you on again. We can talk about hunting stories.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I got a lot of hunting stories, so yeah, anytime.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes we get the hunting stories. Sometimes we get into lessons like this. Sometimes we get into, talking about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
It's always fun where it goes. I don't try and direct it. I just let it go, and we just have a lot of fun chatting and just have a lot of fun.
yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate it, Roy. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's been very great. And just a reminder for those that are still watching or listening, really appreciate your time spending with us. If you have any comments or any questions, just get a hold of me or Kevin. I'm sure he'd be glad to answer any of your questions, just like me. Just watch his podcast. I'm gonna have to watch some of those podcasts now. It's like I'm always interested in those and kind of listen to those and
Yeah,
take a look at his. I'll put some links to some of the podcasts in there that
perfect.
we
Appreciate
showed
it.
earlier,
Yep,
and then get a hold of them, and then we'll just make sure we try and get a hold of you and put some links and that way you can make it a little easier to find us. And remember, just go out to wherever you're normally listen to a podcast. You can listen to um, y your podcast. What was it? Knock Talk.
yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
it's available wherever you get your podcast. You can find Nock Talk on YouTube. You can just type in Nock Talk, or Kevin Toye. Either of those will pop up. A little more action on YouTube lately. Doing a lot of 3D, and I'm going to start filming. We got a camera guy now full time for this year, so we got a lot of cool hunts coming up. So if anybody's interested in seeing what bow hunting in the high alpine of British Columbia is like, there's gonna be a lot of good content on there for that.
Yeah,
So
that'd be good. Go
appreciate it.
out to your YouTube channel and watch those videos. And, I called my YouTube channel Learn to Fix It Yourself. You can always search for I'm Roy Canterbury and get to the same place. But,
Yeah,
because I have not just, archery stuff out there. I have, stuff doing some welding and do that, car repair, building projects and all kinds of stuff out there, a little bit for everybody. And go out there YouTube and watch us. And I started doing a lot of the little short videos, splitting them up into little small ones. I use
yeah, doing the
something
shorts.
called Opus Clip to actually split them up for me and post them out. And so you might see a bunch of those out there. And it's a lot of fun doing those. And I, today I just hit my 1,000 subscribers, so now
Very
I
good.
can get my channel monetized and see how that goes. And you know, not expecting huge money coming in from it, but um, to start. But later on, there are some channels that's all they do,
Yeah, yeah,
and
for sure.
that's
And
that's kind of the goal.
I'll give you guys I'll give you a shout out on my podcast. And I'll let my listeners know where to find you as well. So again, I
Yeah.
appreciate you having me on. Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be good, and we'll have a lot of fun, throughout the days, and be a whole lot of fun. So, thanks again for being on the show, and we'll connect up a little bit later. My name is Roy Canterbury. I've been your host today on Arch Talk 101, and Kevin Toye has been. I'm having trouble talking today. Has been our special guest, and we had a lot of fun today. And we'll see you on the next one.
yeah. Thank you, everybody.